Hi, I'm Alan Tatro with Global Sugar Art, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a rose on a wire. And with a wired rose, it allows you to form it into sprays and flower arrangements, and the roses can be leaning down on the side of the cake or in any position you want. Obviously they're not edible when you have the rose in them, but the remainder of the rose is all gum paste, which is an edible product. And you can see this cake over on the side that we did, and this was all done with roses that had been done on wires. So we were able to wire them together and make this spray of flowers coming down the side of the cake. I'm just going to set that aside. The cutters that you're going to need for a wired rose are the same as the ones for an unwired rose. And if you look at the YouTube videos I've already done one video on how to create a rose without wires. So it's the same exact cutters. Here are some of the FMM cutters. And these are the Gem Easy Rose or all-in-one rose. And then PME also has a set out. And you can also buy metal ones on the market as well. My favorite are either the Gem or the FMM. It's your choice and what your preference is. Today I'm going to use the 90mm Gem cutter, and I've got some gum paste all rolled out and ready to go. If you're rolling this out with an Atlas pasta machine, which I recommend because you get a super even consistency in the thickness, I brought this right down to the thinnest setting, which was a number 8 setting. So I'm just going to put a little bit of cornstarch on my board and a little bit on top, just so that it moves freely. Put my cutter on and then cut in a circular motion, and that gives you a nice clean cut along the outside edge, and that should pop right out. And I'm going to lay these on the soft side of a cell pad or a sponge pad. And to make a regular rose, I'm going to cut 3 of them. So now we have 2 cut, and I've got a couple more all ready to go. So I'm going to take that paste and put it in the bag. I'm going to take a little round piece of paste and show you how to make the center. There are 2 different ways you can make the center. You can use a cell bud, which is made by Cell Cakes. It's just a little styrofoam piece. Use a piece of 18 gauge wire and just put a little bit of hot glue on it and push it into the end of the bud, and then let that dry. And we have some of those all made and ready to go today. The other way is to make them out of gum paste. Just take a small piece of gum paste and make it into a cone. And after you have a nice cone shape, use your same 18 gauge wire, use a pair of pliers, and just bend the end down into a little bit of a hook. And then I have some gum glue made, or you can use egg white if you prefer. Dip it into the gum glue and then push it right into the bottom of the gum paste cone. And then you can shape it a little bit more once it's on that wire. And then from here, you should let that dry overnight to make sure that that wire is really glued in there permanently. Otherwise, when you're making the rose, it'll all come apart on you. So if you make your own, it's very easy to do. Just make sure that they dry overnight. And make sure you do use some sort of a gum glue or an egg white for that wire to adhere to the gum paste. So that's the other way of making the center. Okay, so we have a couple of the petals done. I'm going to take one. I'm using either a ball tool or the end of a medium cell pin, and I'm going to go just around the outside edge. I'm just sort of thinning that out so that the petals are nice and thin. And I usually don't do more than 2 at a time because they tend to dry. Okay, so we have 2 done. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to take one of the cell buds that I've already prepared with a wire. I'm going to take the 5 petals and just put the wire right through the center. And I'm going to use a water brush or a little artist brush with some water on it and wet the bottom. And that's going to help to adhere that paste to the bottom of the bud. Now choose any one of these, and I'm going to wet almost the entire inside surface. And we'll get some good close-ups on this, I hope. We're going to go around the bud, and I'm going to try and make a very tight spiral. Now I'm going to take one on the opposite side. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go on this side. And you can just bend that back a little bit if you want. And that's the center of the rose. Now with the remaining 3 petals, I'm going to take one on this side. Now I'm going to pull this one side back a little bit. So this second petal, or the third petal, now goes on the outside of here, and it's going to go on the inside. So I'm sort of folding them together. And just press down on the gum paste as you do this. So now I'm left with 2 petals, but the bud is all done. So now I'm only going to wet about 1/2 to 2/3 of the way up. I'm going to bring one side up, and just like the last 2, I'm going to leave one side out, make this one go on the outside, and then bring that in. And then just pinch all around the outside to adhere that. Now if you want, you can use your fingers and you can just bring that bud out to open it up a little bit. Okay? Now when you're working with a wired rose, sometimes the best thing to do is hang it upside down, let it sit for 5 minutes, and go back and just work on shaping it until the paste dries enough to hold its place. So I'm going to just bend the end of this. This is a little rack by FMM. It's a little drying rack, and I'm just going to hang that upside down on there. I've got the other petal. I've already softened the edges. Just do a little bit more. Okay, so when you're ready to put your second layer on, I'm going to put a little bit of moisture, a little water on the bottom, or right in the center, excuse me. Pierce through that and bring the rose right up to the top. And then it's very similar to before. You can see where these 2 petals joined. That's where I'm going to start my next row of petals. And I'm going to wet this about halfway down. I'm just going to stick the bottom on, and then I'm going to work my way around and do all of these. I'm not so concerned about what the final rose is going to look like yet. I just want to get the petals stuck to it, and then we can do some shaping. And again, on your final rose, this petal goes over this one and under this one on this side. And you can always add a little water to make it stick. If you have any of the petals that don't stick, just put a little water in there and glue them together. Then you can take your hands and start bringing these petals out and open the rose up. I like to bend them back just a little bit, kind of roll the tips. Again, a lot of the shaping of the rose will be done as it dries, and every 4 or 5 minutes you can shape them a little bit more until you get the final look. So I'm going to turn that upside down, and we'll do the last petal. I try to get a little bit more movement and a little thinner edge when I'm doing the very last row. Put a little bit of water in the center so it sticks, and then open that up unbend the wire. And now you're going to repeat the same process. It helps to put that right in the cup of your hand like that to do the last petals. So I'm going to add a layer. I'm only putting water up maybe a third of the way this time. I can always add more, but you can't take it off. If you wet the petal too far up, it sticks all the way up to the top of the petal, and it's hard to get that movement that you're looking for. Okay, and I wrap those last set of petals. I'm going to go around and sort of press on the edge. And now you can see the rose is very tight. So to open that up, you just pull back on these bottom petals. You can do one row at a time. And what I like to do is I like to pinch them sort of in the center. You get that nice, real blossom look. And then I roll back the ones in the middle. So that's the basics of the rose. I think we're getting there. Now again, I would let that hang upside down for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I would come back, I would lift it up, and I would shape these petals until it's dried enough that it stays exactly where I put it. You can fuss with these forever, so it's your call on how much time you want to spend on every rose. Obviously, if you're making 100 of them for a wedding cake, they're not all going to be perfect roses. But if you're doing a cake like we did over here, where there's 40 or 50 of them on the cake, the ones that really count are the ones that are going to be right up front, or maybe if you're just making a single rose spray for the top of a cake and you want every rose perfect. So there is the basic rose. Now I'll show you how to put the calyx on the back. We're going to use a little bit of green paste for that. And here are the calyx cutters. That's a set of 3 made by FMM. So I'm just using a little bit of green gum paste, a little cornstarch, okay, sticky paste. We're getting into our summer weather here, so gum paste can be a little stickier to work with in the summer. You may have to use a little more cornstarch. I'm going to use the largest calyx cutter. Pop that out. Okay. This time I'm going to use the firm side of the cell pad. And I'm going to use a cell pin, and I'm just going to roll that out to lengthen each one of the 5 arms of that calyx. So rather than using the ball tool and thinning the edge, I'm just rolling it out. And now I'm going to wet probably 3/4 of the way up to the tip. Open that up, put it right in the center, and bring it right to the bottom of the rose. And then flip your rose over, and you just can use your fingers and pull the tips out. If you look at a rose, the calyxes sort of curl out from the bottom. And that's what I'm doing. So that's the effect that you get with the calyx. And then the last thing that you can do is use a little bit of green, make a very small ball of paste, and this is the rose hip. Now again, when you're making roses for a cake or an arrangement, if the calyx and the rose hip are not going to show, you don't need to add those. So oftentimes for a large cake or a large spray, I don't bother at all. So I've just made a little piece of green paste, a little ball, and I'm going to push that up, And then I'm just going to lightly wet the bottom and push that right into place. And then make sure it's adhered to the wire. And that gives you the final look at the bottom of the rose. So it's been a few minutes here. Let's just shape this up a little bit. Okay, and there you have the full-blown rose on a wire. The last thing that I like to do, you can see the difference between the two of these. They were made with the same color of paste. If we can get a good close-up on that. This one I brushed with some petal dust, and I used a deeper yellow in the center and then a softer yellow on the outside. And it just sort of brightens them up and adds a little bit of life and movement into the rose. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on how to make a wired rose. The products I used today were the all-in-one or easy rose cutters. You can use the FMM, the PME, or the JEM variety. I used the JEM set. A calyx cutter. Again, they come in metal, or I use the ones from FMM Sugarcraft. You need some sort of a stand to hang the roses upside down while they're drying. And I used a cell board, a cell pad, a cell pin, and then some sort of a water brush or just an artist brush to put a little water on there. And of course, just a good quality gum paste. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. You can find all the products at globalsugarart.com. Thank you for watching.